Good evening to you. For Taylor Suru, I'm Reagan Devines in Caracas, Venezuela. We begin with this evening's headlines. Up to 8 Mexican tourists killed by Egyptian security forces. Cairo apologizes. Colombia accuses Venezuela of an airspace violation, stoking the fire in discussions over the border. And Germany's borders are closed once more, saying they are overwhelmed by the thousands of refugees arriving daily. That and more now on From the South. Thank you for being here with us. Egypt has apologized to Mexico for an airstrike on a tourist convoy in the Western Desert that may have killed as many as 8 Mexican holidaymakers. 6 Mexicans were wounded and were taken to hospital in Cairo. They reported that their group of 4 vehicles was attacked by an Egyptian warplane and several helicopters as they stopped for a break. The Mexican government has confirmed the death of only 2 of their citizens, but Egyptian sources say 8 Mexicans died, along with 3 or 4 Egyptians.
Yesterday's events have saddened us as a nation. There hasn't been a precedented event like this against our citizens in years. Mexico has demanded from the Egyptian government an exhaustive, thorough and prompt investigation which establishes responsibility.
The Egyptian authorities have indicated that the tourist convoy was in a restricted area where the armed forces were carrying out operations against armed Islamist groups. But after visiting the survivors in hospital, Egypt's Prime Minister called the Mexican ambassador to apologize.
It is a sad accident. I express my condolences to the families of the Egyptian victims and also our Mexican guests. I called the Mexican ambassador to express my condolences too. I'm in contact with the health minister, foreign minister, and social solidarity minister. We established a crisis cell in the cabinet to follow up on the situation.
Mexican President Enrique Peña Nieto will finally meet the parents of the Ayotzinapa students on September 24th, just 2 days before the first anniversary of their forced disappearance. 60 relatives will attend the meeting. The interdisciplinary group of experts that made the report that contradicts the government's version will also attend. Peña Nieto has committed to incorporating the conclusions of the experts group into the investigation. The independent report claimed that there is no evidence of 43 bodies having been burnt at the municipal garbage dump in Cocula, as the official version states. Still in Mexico, another suspect of the gruesome murder of photojournalist Ruben Espinosa, activist Nadia Vera, and 3 other people has been jailed. The suspect was identified as Cesar Martinez Zendejas and is said to be linked to the Zetas drug cartel. Reports are that he was attempting to steal cocaine from one of the victims, a woman from Colombia. The authorities have detained the 3 men that allegedly tortured and killed the 5 persons after CCTV footage captured them leaving the apartment building. Ruben Espinosa was a photographer working with Proceso magazine. He and Nadia Vera had received threats by the government of Veracruz. Judges from Honduras and Guatemala presented a comparative analysis that showed that in the last 3 years in both countries, new laws have been approved to capture and imprison citizens that protest for different reasons. Here is a special report by Telesur's Gerardo Torres.
Decriminalization of protests has been used by government to attempt to silence criticism against their actions and policies. This comes according to several lawyers and judges from Guatemala and Honduras in the last 3 years after both countries have approved new laws to criminalize the protest.
We have identified through this study that there is a state policy in Guatemala and Honduras to criminalize the social protest that has been accompanied with a big number of penal reforms that look to stop or inhibit the right of freedom of speech that is part of the protest.
Campesinos have been imprisoned for demanding the right to the land. Students are currently on trial for protesting against the privatization of education. And political organizations and activists have been accused of being subversive, conspirators, or even terrorists. This is part of the current realities of both countries.
People continue in the social protest, but because of the state's repression and the measures that they are using, they have to retreat, and there is a point where the protesters have to defend themselves in the tribunals. and this affects them and their families. It affects all around the community leader. But the good thing is that we still see people in resistance. They continue demanding from their state a change in policy.
But the people's drive to protest has not stopped because of the criminalization of their actions, but created even more confrontation between government and the people, and without a change in the policy of the government, people's claims and pressure actions will continue. Gerardo Torres, Telesur, Central America.
Climate change will cause more migration from Central America, that's according to the United Nations. This year's El Niño will be even more severe than in past years, and the worsening droughts due to the phenomenon have already severely reduced crop output in several Central American countries for the second year in a row. The American Agricultural Council has had to declare a state of emergency. This, added to the poverty and lack of opportunities of the region, is driving locals to seek a better life in other places. Colombian human rights defenders have confirmed that the FARC has followed its commitment to a unilateral ceasefire as part of an effort by the guerrillas to de-escalate the conflict. A team from the Broad Front of Peace met with rural residents and confirmed the FARC's unilateral ceasefire. However, they added that the Colombian army was allegedly still harassing civilians in an effort to identify guerrillas or sympathizers. The de-escalation of the armed conflict is occurring in the context of peace negotiations between the government and the rebels. The Colombian government has alleged that Venezuelan military planes flew into Colombian airspace without permission. Colombian President Juan Manuel Santos has already submitted a formal protest demanding an explanation from Venezuela. According to a Colombian government statement, the two airplanes entered the municipality of Maicao, which shares a border with the Venezuelan province of La Guajira. And in response, the Venezuelan government has denied violating Colombian airspace. Foreign Minister Delcy Rodriguez even took to Twitter rejecting the accusations. The Foreign Minister said the claim was a fabrication, which seemed to be aimed at frustrating an expected meeting between the Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro and his Colombian counterpart Juan Manuel Santos. The meeting is being coordinated by regional bodies, UNASUR and CELAC. Still in Venezuela, where in the face of an operation to clamp down on smuggling across the border, many people can continue to cross freely. Students, tourists, those who are ill and workers who need to cross between the two countries because of their jobs have all been given permission to move freely from Venezuela to Colombia and back, once the relevant forms have been filled out. Local residents have expressed their satisfaction.
We've seen this with the students and people who are ill. All those cars that were held at the Colombian border side were given free passage and everything is working normally. Students are able to cross in both directions.
They are organizing it all, so now that, although people have to wait, it is all very calm. People with ID cards or passports have to wait a bit, but it's all going very smoothly.
And after the break, an update on the new leader of Britain's opposition. That and more next.
Jeremy Corbyn's victory, Labour MPs were already looking towards the future and their roles.
The world is divided among continents and nations. Nations are divided by borders and interests. These interests divide the news. We examine the impact of these divisions on people and power. This is Imaginary Lines. Watch it on telesurtv.net/English. Telesur, wherever the news, you'll be there. Day by day, they're in the street with one mission: change the world through their actions. This is a different type of program, a conversation. The perspective you won't find in traditional media can be found on The Laura Flanders Show. Watch it on telesurtv.net/English. Telesur, wherever the news, you'll be there.
European leaders are still yet to work out how to distribute 160,000 refugees across the 28-member bloc. This as thousands from Africa, the Middle East, and other countries continue arriving daily on the South European shores. However, they have agreed on one thing: hotspots. They've decided that centers to efficiently register refugees must be set up in Greece and Italy. These EU-funded hotspots will fingerprint and register refugees. However, the leaders were adamant that anyone denied asylum, especially if they are not actually fleeing war or persecution, would be quickly repatriated.
An important point for us is a fundamental agreement on the relocation of 160,000 in total across the European states. We are also in agreement that this must proceed from the hotspots and not the redistribution of those who are already there. There is a condition of agreement for us.
Meanwhile, the most desired destination for refugees, Germany, has set up patrol checks at its border with Austria. German authorities said that since the country opened its borders to refugees a week ago, it can no longer cope with the thousands arriving daily. European nations have now been enforcing their refusal to accept anyone seeking only to improve their economic situations.
Our basic principles do not change. We remain moved by humanity, moved by the right for protection in Germany for those who are persecuted for political reasons and war refugees.
In Hungary, refugees are being redirected to the official border crossing point, only to be met with a heavy police presence. The previous point of entry for refugees there is being closed up with fencing and barbed wire. Hungary has also implemented a new law which states that anyone illegally entering the country can be jailed for as many as 3 years. Countries around the world must balance the acts of keeping their borders with a respect for refugee and humanitarian law. Those were the sentiments of UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, Zeid Ra'ad Al Hussein.
And so I implore decision makers in Africa, the Americas, Asia and the Pacific, as well as Europe, to take swift action to establish effective and principled migration governance. States have a sovereign right to secure their borders and to determine conditions of entry and stay in their territories. But they also have an obligation to respect international human rights law, refugee law, and humanitarian law.
The new leader of Britain's opposition Labour Party has chosen his shadow cabinet. His cabinet features more women than ever before, and he also named John McDonnell, who has said that he wants to overthrow capitalism, as the Minister of Finance. Corbyn won the overwhelming support of party activists by rejecting Blairite policies and the Conservative government's austerity plans. He also said that health and education posts are as important as finance posts.
Well, is health
it's
more
prestige,
important?
It's prestige.
No. You're living in the 18th century, if I may say so.
Well,
that's
who
when
would
the
you
great
put as number
officers
11? Who lives next door to the Prime Minister?
That was in the great officers of state were decided. We have a shadow cabinet of a majority of women covering all areas of policy and public life, and I think it's a great team we've got together. And we've spent a lot of time doing it with a lot of care and a lot of consultation, and it reaches out to the entire party, and I think that is a bit of an achievement, if I may say so.
And former Greek Finance Minister Yanis Varoufakis has offered the solidarity of the Greek people to Jeremy Corbyn, as well as a warning of the difficulties which lie ahead.
The news of the last few days coming from Britain have been astonishing. Jeremy Corbyn, I don't need to add anything to that narrative. You're embarking upon a path that will not be rosy, that will not be easy to tread upon, a path that will be mined and undermined by a toxic media campaign against this magnificent effort.
So what does lie ahead for the newly elected leader of the British Labour Party? Well, his critics claim that he will be divisive, but many on the streets in London say that Jeremy Corbyn is a reason to believe in politics once more.
As the news came in of Jeremy Corbyn's victory, Labour MPs were already looking towards the future and their role as an opposition party to a Conservative government.
I think the biggest challenge, in fact, is facing up to what the establishment, political and media, are trying to get away with doing to the British people, using the banking crisis, a crisis which ordinary people didn't cause, as a smokescreen to try and reverse all the gains ordinary people in Britain have made from the Second World War.
The media has been quick to condemn the new leader, as well as several senior Labour MPs who have since resigned from their posts. In Brixton, South London, some also expressed concern.
While Corbyn might enjoy quite a lot of support from his party members and those that joined, the affiliated supporters, he ultimately won't enjoy that support among the electorate.
For Veronica Ball, however, news that the Labour Party has returned to its leftist roots has been a long time coming.
I've been a member of the Labour Party for 64 years, but for the last, since the early 90s and the growth of neoliberalism, it's been a difficult thing. I've held on because I believe at the centre we have to have solidarity.
Love him or hate him, many say Jeremy Corbyn has revitalised party politics, a practice once seen as distant, alienating and removed from day-to-day life.
I think it's amazing. I haven't voted for years upon years upon years upon years, and now he's in, well, not in power, but the likelihood that he could also maybe be in power has got me interested in politics again.
Communities such as Brixton that have pulled together over the last year to resist the gentrification of the London boroughs hope Jeremy Corbyn will now influence government policy. This Monday, the Labour leader addresses Parliament and will challenge the government's plans to repeal unions' right to strike. Stephanie Kennedy, Telesur, London.
British Prime Minister David Cameron met with King Abdullah II of Jordan in Amman after visiting a Syrian refugee camp in Lebanon in a surprise visit to the country. Cameron pledged that Britain will take 20,000 refugees from refugee camps in Jordan over the next 5 years. During their conversation, they also addressed the clashes between Israeli forces and Muslim worshippers. Jordan's king warned Israel that any further provocation by its forces would damage ties between the two countries, and added that Jordan would have no choice but to take action.
We in Jordan have been very concerned and angered with recent escalations in Jerusalem, specifically in Al-Aqsa Mosque. And we have gotten reassurances from the Israeli government that this will not happen.
And protests took place this Monday in Gaza as the violent clashes escalate between Palestinian worshippers and the Israeli occupation forces. More now with Noor Harazin.
The Islamic Jihad movement in Gaza Strip organized Monday afternoon a march protesting the Israeli aggression against the Al-Aqsa Mosque in East Jerusalem for the second day in a row, aimed Israeli calls for imposing temporal division. Dozens of Islamic Jihad leaders and public figures participated in the protest, arguing the world to exert more efforts to protect the Al-Aqsa Mosque and bring an end to the occupation's ignorance and aggression against the Palestinian people. Earlier on Saturday, violent clashes broke out at dawn between outraged Palestinian worshippers and Israeli police who stormed the Holy Shrine. The tensions grow higher at the site by the arrival of the Israeli Architectural Minister Uri Ariel, accompanied by some 80 Jewish settlers to the Al-Aqsa Yard.
The Zionist attack against the Holy Aqsa Mosque compound and its worshippers is a complete Israeli crime. It is part of an Israeli plot to impose a temporary division of the holy site. Therefore, the Palestinian people have the right of defending themselves and their holy sites against the Israeli attacks. We call our people in Jerusalem, the West Bank and everywhere to be on high alert. Israel is committing such crimes amid complete silence of the Arabs.
Palestinian medical sources said that the Israeli soldiers fired tear gas bombs and rubble coastal steel bullets, causing dozens of injuries among the protesters. The Al-Aqsa Mosque is located in the heart of the old city of Jerusalem on the Temple Mount, and it is one of Islam's 3 holy sites. It is currently under the administration of the Palestinian Jordanian Waqf religious ministry. The Israelis too claim the place as holy for them. Noor Harazin, Telesu TV, Gaza.
And now for a look at other stories making headlines around the world.
Tony Abbott has been ousted from his position as Australian Prime Minister after an internal government challenge by Malcolm Turnbull. Abbott lost a leadership ballot by members of his Conservative Party 55 to 44. This comes as the two-year-old Conservative coalition government struggles to win over the public.
It will be a thoroughly liberal government committed to freedom, the individual and the market. It will be focused on ensuring that in the years ahead, as the world becomes more and more competitive and greater opportunities arise, we are able to take advantage of that.
Democratic presidential candidate Bernie Sanders acknowledged that differences on the issues of abortion and gay marriage, but added that he hoped to find common ground on other issues with conservatives during a address at Liberty University, a Christian conservative audience that is considered to be part of the base of the Republican Party.
I understand that the issues of abortion and gay marriage are issues that you feel very strongly about. We disagree on those issues. I get that. But let me respectfully suggest that there are other issues out there that are of enormous consequence to our country and, in fact, to the entire world, that maybe, just maybe, we do not disagree on. And maybe, just maybe, we can try to work together to resolve them.
A swiftly spreading wildfire destroyed hundreds of homes and forced thousands of residents to flee as it roared unchecked through Northern California. The so-called Valley Fire, now ranked as the most destructive among scores of blazes that have ravaged the drought-stricken western United States this summer. And Indonesia declared a state of emergency in a province choked with thick haze from forest fires. The emergency announcement in Riau province on Sumatra Island came as aircraft were deployed to water bomb the raging blazes and conduct cloud seeding, which involves chemically inducing rain. And one of the latest suspects in the Bangkok blast investigation has fled to Istanbul, Turkey. This is the man investigators believe organised the plot, fled the day before the blast and spent 2 weeks in Bangladesh before leaving on August 30th. Thai police have ruled out international militants as responsible for the attack.
It was a dynamic US Open Finals match in New York between tennis's top seeds, Novak Djokovic and Roger Federer, and it was won by the Serb Djokovic 6-4, 5-7, 6-4, 6-4. This win gave him 3 of 4 Grand Slam titles this year, with the French Open being his only miss. Fans were given a good show of skill and camaraderie, and as is the case in any match between Federer and the new US Open champion, Djokovic had happy words to describe his win, even reminiscing to his dreams as a young tennis player. Cuban musicians are preparing themselves to create history, 300 of them to be exact, as they rehearse come rain or shine ahead of the first visit by Pope Francis to the island. They've given themselves the name The Papal Choir, and they're made up of the young and the old who are almost ready to receive the head of the Catholic Church on September 19th. The visit by the Pope is also said to be a part of improved relations between Cuba and the Vatican. And finally this evening, it's called the Arribada. This is where hundreds of thousands of female olive ridley turtles rush to Mexican and Costa Rican shores off the Pacific Ocean to lay their eggs. The olive grayish-green turtle is said to be the most abundant sea turtle in the world. Females nest every year, once or twice in the season, laying clutches of approximately 100 eggs. More on these and other stories for your website telesurtv.net/English. From our news teams in Quito, Ecuador, and here in Caracas, Venezuela, for Telesur English, I'm Regan Devines. We'll see you tomorrow. Have a great night.